One thing I don't like to do on the podcast is to begin the week discussing something that is negative, especially when it's the loss against Michigan. Well, Ryan Day recently discussed this loss and a coaching error that he made in that game. What error did he admit to? We discussed it today on Locked on Buckeyes.
You are Locked on Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeyes fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked on Buckeyes for the Locked on Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Monday, June 5th in the year 2023, and this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. During today's episode, we will discuss why the coaching error Ryan Day admits to can't happen again, and Urban Meyer has a strong belief in Ryan Day. But first, I want to be somebody to start the week positive, especially during the summer months here on Locked on Buckeyes. I don't want to discuss the loss against Michigan and what it means and the lessons we can learn from that game. But sometimes we have to do that, and that's what's happening today because Ryan Day recently discussed a errors that he made during the loss against Michigan. And it was kind of confusing to think about, but also kind of positive as well. Ryan Day admitted to not having to focus on the proper things during the loss against Michigan. And before we get to the quote, where I will quote and read off what Ryan Day had to say about this game and the error that he made, I got something to say. How in the world do you not have the proper approach and focus during this game? How in the world do you go into that game knowing how pivotal it is to your season and you not approach it in a way that's going to make you be in the right areas to win the game? I mean, doesn't that make sense to you? Biggest game of the year. You talked about it all off season. Focus is on that game. Focus is here. Oh, we've been doing extra coaching. Workouts are more intense. We heard about it all off season. And it comes out, the talk was cheap. Not just because of the outcome, but because of the way the game was played, and because even you admit yourself, Coach Ryan Day, that the focus wasn't in the right areas. Here's what Ryan Day had to say about this game on a podcast, which is hosted by Chris Holtman, the Ohio State basketball coach, called More Than Coach Speak. He's also on the podcast with Director of Professional Development, Terrence Dials at Ohio State. And Day had this to say on the podcast about errors he made during that game. I'm glad he admitted them, but I still can't believe they happened. To quote, I think back on this year and our rivalry game. You want the game so bad that the focus can just be on winning the game. But what does winning the game actually mean? You can't just win the game. You have to win each play. You have to win each situation. I think the mistake I probably made is we're going to win this game. Let's get after them. Let's get physical. Let's beat them up. When you're playing a team or a player that's equal to you, you have to focus on winning every single possession, every single play. And how do you do that? Great technique, great focus. Eventually, you will win the game, end quote. Now, I think there's positives and negatives to this, and I don't agree with everything he said in that game, in that quote. A lot of stuff I do agree with. But however, how about we just I got to be positive here. Thank you, Ryan Day, for admitting that error on a public platform. Because there are things that a coach, as a coach Ryan Day, who knows that what he speaks goes around the world because he's being the coach of Ohio State means so much. It is so important. Yes, this is going to go around the world everywhere. However, I am still baffled and kind of confused and literally scratching my head. We heard that the focus was in the right areas. Not just that there were extra workouts being done and coaches were more locked in. We heard the focus was in the right areas. The focus was on the right things. And in our minds, people like myself, that makes me think the focus is on every single play, every single rep, every single step, on the technique. Should it be your hand be an inch lower or an inch higher, half an inch lower, half an inch higher than you are on this rep, because having it in the proper place, well, you like to have the upper hand in the matchup on this play. Oh, we heard about this stuff all offseason, which makes that loss that weekend sting a whole lot more to me. And I would not be naive enough to say, oh, it hurts me more than it hurts the coaches or the players. Man, I ain't that crazy. Well, I'm a little crazy, but I ain't that crazy, because I'm not a player. I'm not a coach. I am not in the Woody every single day preparing about that game and preparing for that game and seeing the clock in the Woody where all of a sudden you're seeing, oh, countdown to the game, countdown here, 50 days left. Oh, no, 28. No. 22 days left. I am not there. So I will not say it hurts me more than it hurts them. But I will say this. Ryan Day, you have the thought in the right area. Technique. Focus on each play. Focus on everything. Focus is here. Focus is there. 2nd and 3. Better be as locked in as you are on 3rd and 2. 3rd and 2 on your own 22. Better be as locked in as you are on 1st and goal with 3 yards to go. Be locked in on every play. And that goes for all 11 guys that are on the team and to be on the coaching staff as well. You have to be locked in on every play. And Ryan Day knows, and maybe he didn't fully understand the pushback that was going to come after another loss to the Wolverines Thanksgiving weekend in back-to-back seasons. But once again, like last year, we heard all off-season, focus is here. We heard all off-season, things are happening right now to prepare us for that game Thanksgiving weekend. We heard all off-season, Michigan is the focus, and you would think the right technique, making sure you win every play, you win every rep, making sure you win every step in that rep was happening. You would think the focus was in the right area because that's all we heard. But, buddy, it surely showed me, and I know it probably showed you, that the talk was cheap. You can't just talk about it. You got to be about it. And the Ohio State Buckeyes talked a good game. We didn't see that game that they talked on the field Thanksgiving weekend. I'm glad it's actually coming out that Ryan Day is admitting this. There's 2 ways to fix a problem. Well, multiple steps, not just 2, multiple steps to fix a problem. The first one is admitting that there's a problem. And Ryan Day admitted that there's a problem, that the focus was not in the right area. And there are people out there that are maybe on the way to say Ryan Day is not the guy in Columbus, and I have seen comments all around the place saying Ryan Day is not the guy in Columbus. And if you're someone that believes that, you're thinking, hey, Ryan Day just proved my point that Ryan Day is not the guy in Columbus because the focus in that game was not in the proper place. Yes, winning the game is great, but winning every rep, winning every step, winning every down is how you win that game every single year. Man, admitting the error, Ryan Day focuses in the wrong way, I'm cool with that. Like, I don't like it. I don't like the error. We saw it. We all witnessed it. I don't like that even for you admitting the focus was wrong. I don't like it at all. But can that happen again in 2023? I have an answer for you next. I don't think it can. I'll tell you why here on Locked On Buckeyes. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because right now new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. Once again, visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen every single day. Today begins a new schedule around here at Locked On Buckeyes throughout the rest of the month of June. There will only be 4 shows a week, every Monday through Thursday. No more Friday shows during the month of June, which is why you should subscribe to Locked On Buckeyes so you are alerted and updated every time a new video or show goes live. Locked On Buckeyes is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Ryan Day admitting that there was an error, a coaching error during a loss against Michigan. That might be one of the few positives about this very topic. And you might say, Jay, can this happen again? Can Ryan Day have the wrong focus in the game against Michigan in 2023? Absolutely not. It can't happen. It cannot happen. Why? Because if you look at different preseason conversations, now, take it with a grain of salt. Nobody has seen the 11 starters for the Wolverines or the Buckeyes or the Trojans or the Bulldogs or the Crimson Tide or the Auburn Tigers or the Seminoles of Florida State. Nobody has seen the starting 11 on offense and defense play for those schools yet this point in the season, in the offseason. Now, you may have to say, Jay, they saw the spring game. Well, I guarantee you, a starter at Alabama, there are multiple starters at Alabama who started in that game who won't start in the upcoming season. There were guys at Ohio State who started in the spring game who will not start in the fall. So preseason conversations are getting on the phone, texting, getting on message boards, putting out articles, seeing the feedback, talking to sources to try to figure out who has the upper hand right now in the offseason. And so you may say, Jay, we can kind of discuss, well, Ohio State will win the game in the fall against the Wolverines or they won't. And based off talent alone, they should win. No, it'd be great if that was the case. If on paper, if the team that had more stars won the game every year, that would be great because it's probably a good chance Ohio State has more stars in their starting lineup, the recruiting stars that is, than the Wolverines do. But 1, stars don't mean anything on the field. And 2, that also doesn't mean anything in this rivalry because you got to play up to it. You got to bring your A game. Coach, player, everybody involved must bring their A game because what you do on a recruiting database means absolutely nothing once you're on the field. And I think Ryan Day realizes if he has this same error once again, he'll be on the hot seat by almost everybody. I won't go say that Ryan Day is a Larry Coker. I don't think that. The former Miami Hurricanes head coach. I don't think that. I think there are ways that Ryan Day has proven he is not Larry Coker. And so you just think about that for a second. It was a conversation. Ryan Day, Larry Coker connection. No, wrong, not true. There's a conversation. Ryan Day can't get it done. Well, it's possible he can. He's already been into the Natty once, which is something that a lot of coaches in college football that have coached during this time period, a lot of coaches that have coached at blue blood schools have not done during this time period. So I think he's doing something right. But you got to get the right focus in the right. You got to get the focus in the right area. You have to. And I think when it comes to the focus, you got to think about some greats, some guys that are great, not just Ohio State greats, but all-time greats around sports. Think about Urban Meyer, for instance. Does anybody think Urban Meyer would have his focus in the wrong place against the Wolverines in that game? I don't think anybody thinks that. And if somebody tried to convince you that, man, Urban had his focus in the wrong way, but his team just had more talents, you must say, do you know Urban Meyer? Do you know how obsessive he is about this one game? I mean, Urban literally studied them, and the Buckeye coaching staff studied them 365 days a year, even to the fact that they had a guy on the coaching staff. They knew all about the Wolverines, down to the guys they were recruiting, not the commits. The guys they were recruiting, from the guys that the Wolverines are going after in the high school level, all the way to the guys that they're trying to pick up, even not so much transfer portal back then. It was no portal, but maybe pick up as a grad transfer back then in the day. Maybe even transfer back then, sit out a year, whatever the rules would allow them to do. They were doing it. Why? Because it's that important. We discuss it all the time. that what is the most important thing at Ohio State if you're a quarterback? Beating Michigan. I mean, what's the knock on C.J. Stroud? One of them, maybe the first one that comes to your mind, Stroud did not beat the Wolverines. That's clearly a knock on his resume. What's another knock? Doesn't have a playoff win. That's another knock. Why? We're in the playoff era. As an Ohio State quarterback, you are expected, if you're in the playoff, to win the game. Justin Fields didn't win the first playoff game, won the second one he played. C.J. Stroud only played in one, didn't get the playoff back-to-back years, and he lost that game against Georgia. So we all realize one thing is true. Many things are true, but this one thing is true. You gotta beat the Wolverines. It means everything at Ohio State. Ryan Day didn't do it, and I don't think anybody would ever come out here and say, Urban Meyer, he was a great coach. He was a great man. But Urban Meyer ultimately didn't have the right focus in any of the games that he played against the Wolverines, and he happened to win. He's obsessed with it. I guarantee the people that were there in the Woody saw that Urban Meyer's obsession with the Wolverines was put out and caused them to prepare in a certain way so they would beat the Wolverines because Urban Meyer was. But there's somebody else. Y'all know I like basketball. Kobe Bryant, one of the reasons he's my favorite player of all time in the NBA is because of his obsession with the sport. Not just the sport, the obsession of being the best. Not just his obsession with being the best, but also his obsession with the little details. How crazy would it be if you saw C.J. Stroud on a field by himself practicing the footwork without a football? You would say that's crazy. You would say that's insane. What if you saw not just the footwork that Stroud was practicing? What if you saw C.J. Stroud practicing the footwork without a football and making passes on air to nobody? 3-step drop, 5-step drop, roll out, bootleg, waggle, whatever it is. What if he's doing this for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes without a football? You would say that's insane. It's also a little odd, and maybe some call it insane, that Kobe Bryant practiced moves without a basketball at time. Literally on the block, practicing footwork, practicing shots without a ball. At the top of the key, practicing footwork, practicing shots without the ball. Bringing the ball up court, I'm sure I didn't see it, but it wouldn't shock me. And Kobe Bryant was doing these things without a ball. Why? An obsession with being the best. An obsession of beating his opponent. He went up against Michael Jordan. Now, granted, maybe it was the latter stages of Jordan's career, but he still went up against Michael Jordan. And what did Kobe Bryant believe? That he could beat him in a one-on-one matchup. That time in the All-Star game. That time in the regular season. Why? A belief in himself, but because of the way he practiced as well. There's an obsession that Ryan Day needs to have with this rivalry, and having the wrong focus cannot happen again. I don't want to come on here. November 25th, 2022. I believe that's the day of the game. And all of a sudden, we're discussing another loss. And me saying, well, Ryan Day said you didn't have the right focus. Maybe it came true again. Maybe not the right guy for the job. Now, I'm not going there. I don't want to do it. But we're going to have a very interesting conversation. If the focus is in the wrong areas and the Buckeyes lose again, man, I think I'm going to be harsh on them. Wait till we get some of the guys here on the podcast to discuss the very thing. You got to be obsessed with beating that team up north, which means having your focus on even the smallest detail in the game. Because if you do that, there's a good chance you'll beat them Thanksgiving weekend. Do you have a belief in Ryan Day that he is the right guy for the job? Urban Meyer does. We'll discuss what Ryan Day had to say. Urban Meyer had to say about his belief in Ohio State's head coach next on Locked On Buckeyes. Thanks for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen every single day. Now the perfect time to leave a 5-star review or rating, or maybe even a comment on YouTube about today's show. Apple or Spotify listeners, leave a 5-star review on Apple. Leave a comment. It's a great way to help the show grow and to allow more people to come across Locked On Buckeyes on YouTube. Simply leave a comment and hit that like button on this video. Locked On Buckeyes is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. I didn't think we would come on here in back-to-back days on Friday's show of last week and today's show discussing something Urban Meyer had to say about Ryan Day. I didn't think it was going to happen because normally I don't really think about Urban Meyer this time of year. I think about maybe comparing him to a coach in Ryan Day or Jim Tressel, but discussing things that Urban Meyer said, it's not really on my mind. And then I came across something Urban Meyer said at an event. He was talked to by the Ohio State media, and Dan Hope of 11 Warriors, he asked Urban Meyer a question, a simple question, but a question that Urban Meyer answered before Dan Hope got the full question out. Dan Hope of 11 Warriors had this to say, this question to Urban Meyer, quote, "How much confidence do you have in Ryan Day that he is the guy to get that back on track," end quote. And Urban Meyer said, no doubt, no one better. Clearly left it without a question in his mind. No doubt, no one better. No doubt that Ryan Day can get the job and beat the Wolverines, get that back on track, but also no one better. And this also is happening while Urban Meyer was discussing how to beat the Wolverines, like what it takes to win that game. Another question, what do you got to do to beat them? That's a question that Urban Meyer asked or kind of discussed while responding to a question about beating the Wolverines. Ryan Day had this to say, you got to control, coaches' names, get it together. Urban Meyer had this to say about Ryan Day or about beating the Wolverines in that game. You got to control the line of scrimmage. We have seen over the past couple of years that the Wolverines have kind of won the line of scrimmage throughout most of the game. Now, granted, a year ago, there were times the Buckeyes won the line of scrimmage, but the Wolverines' O-line was so good that it makes you think there was a good chance that the D-line of Ohio State was worn down in the fourth quarter, which may have led to the long touchdown runs that the Wolverines had in that game. But when he was discussing this very topic about the Buckeyes playing Michigan, what it takes to beat the Wolverines, Urban Meyer discussed that that's a good team. He said there were a couple teams when they played Michigan, when Urban Meyer was a coach, that the Wolverines were a top 5 team in the country. And so he understands, one, they're good. They're really good. They're one of the best programs in the country. 2, they have really good players all across the board. And 3, he even said they have a great coach. He gave credit to where credit is due. He acknowledged they're one of the best of the country. 2, he acknowledged their players are really good. 3, he acknowledged how good of a coach they have, which goes to why Urban Meyer realized, hey, you got to control the line of scrimmage in this game if you want to win. It's an expected thing by everybody across the board. It's also why here on this show, during the season, we're going to talk about game prep and ways the Buckeyes can beat Notre Dame and beat the Wolverines and beat Penn State and beat Wisconsin. What will you get me on here discussing? That the Buckeyes got to win the line of scrimmage every single game. Same against Indiana. Same against Western Kentucky. Same against fill-in-the-blank school on the Buckeyes' regular season schedule in the fall. You have to win the line of scrimmage because that's where everything starts. If you want to keep the quarterback upright and keep his jersey clean, protect the line of scrimmage and win and control the line of scrimmage. If you want to have the backs, Myan Williams, Travion Henderson, whoever gets a handoff for the Buckeyes in the fall, if you want to give them open holes, you have to win the line of scrimmage. Also on defense, if you want to stop somebody on 4th and goal or 3rd and 8, control the line of scrimmage. 1st and 10, 2nd and 18. Offense or defense, doesn't matter what side of the ball you're on, control the line of scrimmage, which is why I love Urban Meyer so much, because he understood that at Florida, at Bowling Green, at Utah, and especially at Ohio State. You have to control the line of scrimmage to win games, but especially when you're playing the best team on your schedule every single year, win the line of scrimmage. Urban got it. I hope Ryan Day does, because if not, Ryan Day could be looking at 3 consecutive losses to the Wolverines in the fall, and nobody wants that to happen. We're out of here on a Monday. You can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can send all of your emails to jstevens317@gmail.com. Thanks for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen every single day. Now is the perfect time to check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, where you can get everything you need to know around the world of sports in 20 minutes or less every single day, featuring the experts that are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On Buckeyes and Locked On Sports Today, they're both a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're out here on a Monday. This is the Monday edition of Locked On Buckeyes. I am Jay Stevens. I'll see you next time.